I'm Lauren, certified building biologist, wellness interior designer, and healthy home expert. I want to welcome you to the House Holistics video podcast, where we explore how healthier buildings create healthier people. I'll be bringing you conversations with some of the brightest minds in the world, because perhaps your full potential is on the other side of a healthier environment. I'm your host, Lauren Riddei. Let's go deeper. Healthy home design finishes. Where to save and where to splurge. I am so excited to be here with my friend Jen. She is a fellow building biology colleague and a friend in this space of healthy homes. Jen, how are you today? I'm so excited to be with you.
I'm great, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you. It's been fun getting to know you in our building biology classes, and I love the work that you're doing, and I love how you're creating beautiful things and doing it in a safe way. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. I tell my clients to, a lot of people they look at their finishes first and they only think about their finishes. And while that's important, you also have to think about what's inside your walls and create a healthy wall assembly that's going to hopefully outlive you. And it doesn't really cost that much more, but you do need to prioritize it. And I would love to talk with you about how to also have a beautiful space and a healthy space together.
Well, I think we're going to cover a lot of ground today. And before we get started, I just wanted to share briefly when I first met you, Jen, it was through our Building Biology Institute training. And I remember approaching you and just getting the sense that you have and had this embodied knowledge of actually experiencing some pretty serious environmental illness and pain
Mhm.
and trauma. And I got the sense from you, not those things, but that you have overcome and that you have triumphed through
Mhm.
those things. And you just had this embodied energy about yourself that, man, this woman knows her stuff because she's experienced it. And that was before I knew you wrote a book. That was before I knew you have already been through the building science world as well, right? Including the building
Right.
biology world. So can you very briefly, Jen, share a little bit about who you are, where you're tuning in from, and just why you're in this field? I would love for you to share that.
Yeah, I love that you just said that because I feel like that's the purpose of my life is to make lemonade out of lemons. My history was my husband and I, we had a 100-year-old craftsman house. And unbeknownst to us, it had major mold in it. And we didn't find out until I got really sick when my kids were like 5 years old. And I went to a mold doctor and he said, after exhausting, my Western medicine options and doing lots of surgeries that didn't help and lots of pharmaceuticals that didn't help, I ended up at this mold and Lyme doctor. And he said, "You have mold in your home and you have Lyme disease." And I said, "I don't have any mold in my home." Even though I could see it, you're just conditioned to say it doesn't matter. And so at the time I thought it doesn't matter. And I was like, Lyme disease doesn't exist because that's what the world tells us. Lo and behold, I tested positive for both things. And so then I was down the rabbit hole. And we ended up taking that house completely down to the studs and totally rebuilding it because we found mold everywhere. And that was really the only way to deal with it. And then a few years later, one of my kids went completely off the rails. And things just got worse and worse. He would escape from school. He would try to beat us up. And he would just, like, in between, he was this normal, loving, intelligent. But at times, just like this rage would take over him. And it just seemed more than tantrums. So I asked his pediatrician, who was one of the best pediatricians in the Bay Area, and he said just normal growing pains. I asked numerous doctors. We did sleep studies. I eventually ended up at a neurologist for my migraines. And I was late because I had to go to his school and chase him all around the neighborhood because he'd run from class. And then I was late to this doctor's appointment. And she started asking me questions. And she said, "Have you ever had him tested for PANS pandas?" And I said, "What is PANS pandas?" Well, long story short, he has it, which is it's basically brain inflammation caused by mold. And so we realized we had mold again in our house. But at that point, both of my kids had pandas, and I did myself as well, and probably always have. And we were very sick, and we couldn't stay, the year that it would take to get the foundation problem fixed. And so I took my kids and we camped through the American Southwest for 6 months. And we were looking for rental houses everywhere in between Hawaii and Colorado, toward numerous houses. Most of them we walked straight in and realized they were moldy, and some of them we tested and they still tested badly. We never found a place to stay. We ended up moving back to the California Sierra foothills to be closer to my husband and his job. And at that point, we were realizing that the outdoor air also mattered. It wasn't just the indoor air, it was that we needed to be in clean outdoor air. I think EMF radiation had a lot to do with that too, not being a hotspot kind of area. But we ended up camping for 3.5 years total. COVID was a silver lining because my husband all of a sudden was working from home and was able to spend more time with us because I was kind of burning out at that point. But I'm pleased to say my kids are normal, neurotypical teenagers at this point. We are living in a mold safe home that we built ourselves with our own hands. And I am doing great as well. I've now survived breast cancer twice, which I think was also related to the mold. And I'm healthy. For the first time in my life, I'm healthy. And I really feel like all of this happened because we need to change the way that we build. And I am so passionate about being part of that process and being the change that the world will see, and making it so that so many other people go through the same thing. I'm not the only one with a story, and making it so that no one has to, because it's a total nightmare. So I'm really excited about being here, and I love this line of work and everything I learn. It just feels very empowering to me about how we're going to make our homes healthy and safe for everybody, and we're getting there, and I'm loving it.
That's right. That's right. Well, I am so happy you guys are finally at this place of health. And that is often a goal that we want. We want to be healthy, but we don't always look at our interior environments, right? We look at supplements and we look at our diet and we look at our movement patterns. But for some reason, Jen, and you and I both share this pain experience of going, wait a second, I'm in these work, play, and live environments 90% of the time, and yet I've never thought about these environments impacting my health negatively. And so to be on the other side of this, Jen, where you've been able to build your own safe, health enhancing environment where you've been able to rejuvenate, you've been able to heal, is the most empowering thing on the planet. Am I right?
Totally, it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So today we're going to get into a subject okay, so you started to talk about this before we logged on, Jen. Wall assemblies. We really encourage clients we work with directly, the audiences we educate. We want you to have a wall assembly that is resilient. And so in your own words, Jen, as you have consulted with clients, how are you describing the importance of putting your money towards a more resilient wall system?
Yeah, that's a great question to start out with. So, I think a lot of us, when we look at our homes, what we can see matters the most, and what our countertop is, and what our lighting and plumbing fixtures look like, and what our furniture looks like, and throw rugs, and all of that. And that's because, I mean, we see it every day. So of course that's what first comes to mind in our homes. And I completely think that's fair. It's important to have a home that we aesthetically feel good in, and that is beautiful to us, and that reflects who we are. I think that is super important. And also, the things that we can't see in our home matters. What is under our slab foundation or our basement foundation matters, and what is in our wall matters, and whether our roof is totally protected from precipitation matters. And so a lot of the time what happens in a home build is that we design our floor plan because that's what we see, and we want the functionality, and we design what our finishes are going to look like, and that's important too because that reflects who we are. But we kind of just leave the assembly and the how to build it part up to our contractor. Most plans that isn't even drawn, and it just is sort of figured out along the way as the build goes. And that is a great formula for having problems in our wall assembly. And most contractors, they work really hard and they're out working, 10, 12 hours a day in the hot sun, they don't have time to sit and read about build science and about the physics of how buildings work. And so that stuff just isn't being taken into account in our assemblies. And so what I encourage people to do is while they're designing their floor plan, think not just what the house will look like, but also how it will be built, and budget for that. And in terms of budgeting, the way that we value houses right now is basically based on square footage, and it's based on what aesthetic condition it's in, how it compares to its comps. And so if you build a better wall assembly, that's not recognized in the appraised value of a house for the most part. So you have to figure out how to balance your entire budget so that it still comes in somewhere near the appraised value, but also so that it's built with a more robust assembly. And so the way that I tell people to do that is to really think through what your aesthetics are going to be, what your furnishings are going to be. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can cut down cost on aesthetics and design without sacrificing the way that it looks at all, and just being a little bit more deliberate about the choices we make and where our money's being spent.
That's right. And, I've started off my career as a professional luxury interior designer, and I went to school for it. I had a great internship, and I had some incredible education, but nowhere along the way was I educated in terms of how are these finishes or how are these building materials impacting the health of the end user, the occupant. And that's part of why I'm so passionate about educating building industry professionals, because I didn't receive that education myself. And many of my colleagues have not received that education, whether they have gone to school or they are self-taught. It's one of those subjects that, unless there's canaries in the coal mine speaking up and out, we're not going to know about it. And so getting very sick from going to job sites, experiencing a lot of that dust, sheetrock, drywall, lumber, and after job site visits, having to be in bed for days just because I had so much inflammation in my mind and in my body. And of course, the onset of so many symptoms that we don't need to go into today. But I just say that to say that when you know better, you do better. And so that is very much why I am in this field, because now I know that it's more than just what our eyes see. It is really the guts of our building making up the health of the home as well. And so, yes, we really want to encourage our clients. Let's put our budget towards the wall assembly, and then let's figure out how we can save some money along the way, because we really need to be putting our money towards the most important facets. And in the past, the most important facets have been what people can see, have been aesthetics, because that is what culture tells us, right? We have Architectural Digest highlighting really just what's on the surface and what is getting photographed. I mean, I don't see a lot of articles talking about the interior insulation being mineral. Like, how sexy is that? Like, I get it. I totally get it. It is not super sexy to talk about the guts of a building envelope. But you know what, Jen? You and I, we're gonna make it sexy. How about that?
I totally agree. We will make it sexy because it is.
Okay, well, you and I both polled our audiences, and we asked our folks, like, hey, we are going to have this conversation about how to save money on design finishes. You polled your audience, I polled mine. And I want to start off with the first question that came from your community, and then we'll just kind of weave in all the subjects from cabinets and countertops and lighting and appliances. So if you are interested in this, audience listening, please pay attention, because we're going to talk about some very significant categories when it comes to finishes. So this question is how to balance all the trade-offs. It seems really hard to balance costs, VOCs, appearance, what is good for you, what is good for the environment, what is good for workers, etc. For example, quartz seems like a good option because it is beautiful, easy to clean, and very durable, but it is also costly, extremely toxic to the workers that cut it, and probably not very biodegradable when you are done with it. So Jen, how would you answer that question?
I think it's a great question. I want to say it's a great question, and it is the question. And I think this is why it's so important for everyone to, check in with ourselves at the beginning of a project and really decide what our own priorities are. And I think something that's come up in this conversation already is that for me, I got very sick from mold and probably EMFs. And when I think about what my priorities are, it's to prevent mold and to minimize EMFs. And while VOCs are important to me as well because I'm somewhat sensitive to them, for me it's not the be all end all. And there is no such thing as the perfect environment. There always are trade-offs. I mean, that's what this entire question is about, is that you have to make some trade-offs. And so it's important at the beginning of your own project to really check in with yourself and figure out what what your particular priorities are and what matters the most, so that when you do have to make trade-offs, then you can decide where those fit in all of your priorities. So what would you
Yeah,
say?
you nailed it. We learned in 2020 how vastly different everyone's health is, right? So what is good for one person might not be the best for another person. And creating healthy homes is the exact same way, because we all have varying immune systems and endocrine systems and sensitivities. And so if there is someone that their health goals are to really shield themselves from electromagnetic radiation pollution, then they're going to put their budget towards MC cable, towards hiring an electromagnetic radiation specialist to be on their build team. Whereas someone that may have more of a chemical sensitivity and may not necessarily have an EMR sensitivity, they're going to want to really focus on the health of each material that takes up the most space. So think wall coatings, think tile, think flooring, even down to furniture. They're going to want to put their budget towards making sure that the fabrics, the textiles, the foams all meet certain certifications and standards of really exceptional health. So yeah, it really does depend on the health goals and where someone is hoping to move towards, because you're right, there's no perfect environment and we can only do the best we can, but any sort of precaution is worth it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think it's worth it to take precautions, and also just worth it to be deliberate about our decisions and know why we're making
Right,
them.
right.
And I think I didn't address, the ethics of how these materials are for the workers that create and install them, how the impact that they have on the environment. And I think those are also important decisions. And I'm not going to get into any politics here because right now is really not the time to be talking about politics, but we do all have different, very firm beliefs. And I think it's important to get in touch with those, what those are, how our ethical beliefs impact our decisions as well. It's not just our health, it's what's our worldview, and how does each individual decision reflect on that.
Yeah. The foundation of building biology, which Jen and I are both triple certified, it just means that we studied a lot and we went to school for
Yes.
a while and we read a lot and we have lived experience, and you too can go receive your certification.
Thank you. Sure.
Yes, we really think that it should be a college course in our universities here. It is in Europe, believe it or not. Building biology is part of the collegiate learning, but not so much in North America. And so there's a reason why the subject is so new, because we were not taught this. Maybe for a reason we don't know, but we are now able to freely teach this and learn. And yeah, so we do always want to encourage people alongside, if they hired a building biologist to be on their team, buy Paula Baker Laporte's book, Healthy Home, and learn
Mhm.
alongside the journey. I know for me, Jen, and I know you share this as well. You're an educator, you're a teacher, you're an advocate, and you want others to experience a learn process through this as well. So
Yeah, it's very empowering to learn this. I think a lot of us who have gone through this have been in a position where we feel like we don't have a lot of control over our health or our environment, and we're just sort of at the mercy of everyone around us. And so it's very empowering to learn all of this for ourselves and take back that control. And I definitely do encourage people to do it. I think it's part of the healing process is, okay, this makes sense and I can do this. And here is why it makes sense.
All right, well, you ready to get into some of these details? So, someone has put all their money into a robust and resilient wall system. The box is checked. So, where would you start, Jen, with suggesting someone save some money right off the bat?
Well, I want to completely acknowledge what you said before about if someone is sensitive to VOCs, or really even if they're not, I think the bigger impact things are the big pieces. And so, like you had mentioned, flooring, wall covering, I would also say, even with the assembly, I would start with the assembly, and I would say if you're going to choose building materials, choose the ones that use phenol formaldehyde versus urea formaldehyde. An easy thing to do with things like you can get a zip sheathing versus OSB, because zip uses phenol and OSB uses urea. So that's a good way to have a big impact decision just in your walls. But the same goes for flooring and wall covering. So let's start there. Let's talk about paint and flooring.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, paint. So that is a massive area in your home that can positively impact health or negatively impact health. And so thankfully, since 2020, prices have really started to level out with these maybe more natural, healthy home finish options and off the shelf conventional options. We are starting to level out, and the prices are about becoming the same. So a lot of times people
Really?
think, oh, well, um, I don't want to use a mineral coat paint because it's not going to be as cost efficient as, say, Benjamin Moore. Well, here's the thing I do want to encourage this audience is mineral-based paint. I'm thinking of BioShield specifically, and Alchemist paint, is because it's such a dense material made with various aggregate, sometimes quartz, varying minerals. It is very thick and dense. And so you just need less of it. So I'm thinking about all the homes that I had painted in off the shelf brands, Jen, and it would take, I mean, we would need 3 to 4 coats on top of a primer. And so you end up spending the same amount of money, but you're using less of the mineral-based wall coating. And so sometimes we just have to educate and really try for yourself. You only need two coats of Alchemist specifically. You don't even need a primer. And so not only can you interact with the space immediately upon application, but for me, when I've used it personally, I have no reactions. I have no sensitivities coming from it. And I think about the health of the painters, right? I think about the trades that are applying these products, and I want to be able to use products where they can go home and not have headaches, not have inflammation. So yeah, I would really advise looking into a mineral-based wall coating.
See, I just learned something there. I've never actually priced it out, and I would love to price it out. Do you happen to know if a mineral-based paint can be sprayed on, or does it need to be rolled
Yes, it
on?
can be sprayed. I know Alchemist can be sprayed. There is a little bit of a learning curve, right? So if you're using it for the first time, or your painter is using it for the first time, there are protocols and how to best use it that are on their website specifically, to kind of make sure that the process goes as smooth as possible.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great to know. I usually use Benjamin Moore Aura, and my husband and I do our own painting. We have a spray gun that we got at Harbor Freight and the right nozzles, and we I used to roll, but now it's so much easier to spray. And so usually what I do is use Benjamin Moore Aura, which the outside one, I kind of have trouble. The inside one is less toxic to me. And usually, yes, it does need a coat of primer and then 2 coats of the Benjamin Moore Aura specifically. Even other Benjamin Moores need more coats. So that's why I like the Aura. But in the future, I'll definitely price it out with one of the mineral-based paints, because the other great thing about the mineral-based paints is that they are vapor permeable. And we really want to keep our wall assembly as vapor permeable as possible so that when, and I don't say if, but when water does inadvertently get into the wall assembly, it can dry out. So that's definitely another pro for that brand.
Right. Would you add anything else about paint or wall coatings?
I think one of the other questions that we've had lately is, and this might be a good time to talk about it, is wallpaper ever safe? And so that kind of ties into what I was saying before about we really want our walls to be vapor permeable. And for people that don't know what that means, so we know from science class in fourth grade that water can be in three forms. It can be in ice form, frozen, it can be liquid water, like what comes out of our faucet, and it can be vapor, like the steam that comes out of like a tea kettle, for instance. And those have to do with how close the molecules are to each other. So like with ice, they're super close and dense, whereas steam, they're fairly far apart. And so that means that steam or vapor can go through walls. And so we want water to basically be able to evaporate, turn into vapor or steam, and then migrate out through the walls. That's why that's important. So when you have a wallpaper that's a plastic base, that is a vapor barrier. And what that means is the vapor can't get through, it just gets stuck. And when that happens, it almost always creates mold at some point, usually in a place where you can't even see it. So it isn't like it just shows up on your wall. It's like on the backside of the drywall or something like that. So we don't ever want to use a plastic-based wallpaper. There are some times when it might be okay to use a paper-based permeable wallpaper as long as the glue is permeable too. I wouldn't personally do that on an outside wall just because of the way building science works. When things go from hot to cold, then at some point water condenses, and it's that condensing where it's turning from vapor to liquid that causes mold. And so that tends to happen more on outside walls because your temperature inside is always at, like, let's say 68, and your outside temperature can vary from freezing all the way to very, very hot. And so at some point, the exterior wall is protecting your indoor environment from that temperature change, and we want vapor to be able to go all the way through that wall and dry out. So I wouldn't put any other layers that prevent that from happening on an exterior wall or in a room where water happens, like a bathroom or a laundry room or something like that. Maybe in an interior wall of a dining room where you know that wall is being done right and there's no temperature difference, then maybe I would say like a paper-based wallpaper with permeable glue, or you could just use stencils too and get a lot of the same effect.
Yep, ditto. We know wall coverings and our wall surfaces make up a large portion of our room. So we are particularly interested in reducing those exposures to any toxins and materials. So, just to meet code requirements, often interior wall coverings like wallpaper contain substances that can harm human health just to meet code requirements. So there are often additives used to resist mildew and stains and fire, but they include flame retardants and PFAS and antimicrobial chemicals. And especially wallpapers made with vinyl, they should be avoided for just their hazardous impact throughout the entire life cycle, from the end user, but yes, to the trade person applying it, all the way back to the factory. So we, in general, in homes that meet exceptional health standards, we want to avoid vinyl products in general. And wall coverings are often made with vinyl or vinyl blends. And so if there are backings on the other side of the wallpaper, they can contain PVC or other plasticizers. And so we do want to look for natural wall coverings. They make them out of flax or even a cellulose product. And then we also want to make sure that the backings are made with an FSC certified paper gin, like you said, or flax or other natural backings. Yeah, so we just want to avoid, and this goes to furniture too, stain and any water repellents because they contain PFAS. And so one recommendation that I would say where you can save money is opt for the stenciling option with mineral-based paints. I don't think the resurgence of mural artist is by accident. I mean, I have so many amazing mural artists in my county that if I just coach them on using a different type of paint that maybe they have never worked with, you can have a stunning wall that looks like you used a vinyl based wallpaper and it is vapor permeable.
Awesome. I
And one more
love it.
thing, like with wallpaper, you do want to look to see how those inks are produced. So look out for certifications like Green Guard or Nordic Swan just to make sure how those inks are produced and how they are manufactured, because there are so many steps in the process, but you will save money if you opt to avoid wallpaper. You will also you are putting some deposits into your health account by by often choosing not to use wallpaper.
Totally. And I just have one more thing to say, another money saving tip is that if you every time if you're not painting yourself like I am, if you're hiring a painter, every time they have to change color, you have to pay a color change fee. And so if you have every room in your house a different color, that's going to be a lot more expensive to paint than if you just do maybe one overall color and maybe a couple of accent walls or a couple of rooms a different color. So just keep that in mind. I mean, if there's a reason that you want to have every room a different color, then fine, but just know that that has a financial implication and you can save money by just picking a color for your house and using that. And it makes it faster and easier to paint.
Pro design tip as well. I mean, I've often recommend, hey, whatever we're using on the walls, let's use it on the casings and the trim and the ceilings. Let's use it all in one. And so not only is it such a beautiful monochromatic experience, but you are saving money by opting for one paint versus sometimes the builders will present 4 to 6.
Totally.
So let's talk about countertops. So right off the gate, I would say Butcher Block is one of the most affordable countertops that you could invest in. And here's a couple reasons why I love Butcher Block. So Butcher Block, it has natural hydroscopic properties. So in your kitchen, you have a lot of humidity. You can have steam. You can have a lot of water in that area. And so we do like to recommend having some sort of hydroscopic properties in that space to absorb moisture and release moisture as it needs, right? Just like our own bodies, how when we sweat, we have hydroscopic properties in our own biology. And so what I love about Butcher Block is it does something very similar as long as it is sealed with a natural sealant. So I really like linseed oil or tung oil or beeswax. I remember our professor, Paula Baker Laporte, she had said that she was, I don't know if she was using ghee at some point for her breakfast and had a little bit of ghee fell out of her jar on her counter. And she was like, it makes for a great sealant on my Butcher Block.
Bet it does.
Yeah. And so, you know what? For those that are a little wild, creative, and free that aren't perfectly neat and tidy, you rub that butter into your Butcher Block.
It's beautiful.
I mean, yeah, it's breathable. It's able to expand and contract as nature intended it to do. We are always, always, always going to go back to nature. What was nature's goals? What did it intend to do? And how in the world did we get to the place where we are stopping nature from doing what nature does? So let's get into counters. Jen, what's your opinion? Give me some thoughts, riff a little bit about countertops.
So I love Butcher Block. I had a Butcher Block once though around a sink and I did find that it got water damage. And so that would be the one question I'd have. We didn't have linseed or tung oil on it. We just rubbed mineral oil into it. So maybe there's a way to finish it and prevent that from happening. I'm not sure. That's just my one experience with Butcher Block, but I think you could do it so that you use a different countertop just right around the sink and use Butcher Block everywhere else. I don't
Yes,
know.
so
What are your thoughts on it?
okay, yes. Undermount, did you have an undermount sink?
We
Okay,
did, yeah.
so that's kind of the secret with Butcher Block. So you don't want an undermount sink when you're dealing with Butcher Block because that will happen. So you want a sink that can kind of have that lip around a drop-in sink. Obviously, those aren't always the most sexy, right? But it does protect that kind of wet edge that you would potentially be exposed to with butcher block.
That's a great tip. I'm going to remember that. That's a
And you
great
can
tip.
save money on a stainless steel sink by just getting a drop-in.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I like drop-ins. They're easier to clean. I mean, it just depends. I think I've had the question before, drop-in or undermount, or I think they can all work. It's more whether they're installed correctly. So that's a great use for a drop-in sink. And then I would say too on countertops. So what I usually do is quartz, but I buy it through IKEA. And that gets us into cabinets as well. We can talk about that. I always buy all my cabinets and countertops at IKEA. And that is one great way to save money. So from a VOC standpoint, IKEA is made of MDF. But they follow the European standards and not the American standards. And so their VOC levels they're usually green guard type levels. They're much lower than just an MDF cabinet from Home Depot or Lowe's. Again, VOC is not my highest priority, so that might change if that were your highest priority. But for me, I can save a lot of money at IKEA, and I also really like the functionality. It's super important to me to have bottom drawers in a kitchen, and all of my bottom cabinets are drawers, and usually deep drawers that I can put a mixer in, or I can put, sheets, or just everything is organized in drawers for me. IKEA cabinets have the European soft close hardware just by default. They have drawers by default. And they usually have a kitchen sale. They usually also have a countertop sale. So I buy quartz countertop through IKEA, and I've tried to price it out and get competitive quotes through other places. And I walk in the door and they say, "Where are you buying it?" And then they say, "We can't match that. Just go ahead and buy it from IKEA." Because there's no work. They come nowhere close. So I would say call IKEA if you're interested in quartz or interested in cabinets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
So what
can't
do you think?
beat IKEA's pricing with cabinets. And so I think you make a wonderful, wonderful point too. If chemical sensitivity is lower on the list, although the standards, everything is better in Europe, right? But
Right.
but if chemicals or SVOCs or VOCs are lower on your list, I think it's a fabulous option, and they're so functional. They give you so many options too. And I would just say what I love about IKEA's cabinets is the aesthetic is I like a simple slab door. And so
Mhm.
I would add that you can often get a carpenter to work with you if they have built some shelves and cabinets to do simple slab door style cabinets and using the wood of your choice. And so you can then seal it however you please. I was an antique dealer and an antique collector, still am, but when I was very sick, I was not able to go at all to antique stores. I could not go to secondhand stores without having a lot of reactions. But thankfully now I'm in a better place and I can continue my hoarding ways of of amazing one of a kind finds. But what I love about antiques is that let's talk antique tables or vanities for a second. I have repurposed antique nightstands into pedestal bathroom vanities that have the drawers, that have the shelves, and this wood is from 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so it's made with high quality wood that has long since stopped off gassing, and you can always refinish it and seal it with a natural sealant. So that's a beautiful way to save money if you have a little bit of a creative flair and you're willing to put a little extra time into, say, sourcing on Facebook Marketplace or going to antique stores. And then you can just get a simple pedestal sink and then a pedestal faucet, and you have a beautiful, functional, and healthier bathroom vanity for your powder room. But
I
I
totally
understand not everyone, like if you are dealing with sensitivities, I understand sometimes the secondhand adventure is not for you right now.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, and that's where it comes back to what our priorities are, is that I cannot even go past an
There
antique
you
shop.
go.
It just messes me up. I can't go in a thrift shop. I don't buy things on Facebook Marketplace because I can't. And I loved thrifting. All of my clothes were from thrift stores, and I have this awesome sense of style. And now I buy all my clothes from Costco, which honestly really sucks because I used to love my clothes before, but I can't go in thrift shops anymore. I think that, if you're not sensitive to mold, then you can get I totally agree with that, is that the quality of how we made furniture before was so much better than the cardboard we make it with now. And so if you can find a beautiful functional piece and restore it, not only is it, less expensive and better quality, but it adds so much character to your home, and it reflects you versus, a generic Macy's idea of what a home should look
Yeah.
like.
And you can save a lot of money by opting for a well-loved secondhand table and turn it into an island. So there you go. You save tons of money on cabinetry by maybe retrofitting, by making the legs a little longer, or finding some sort of table that has drawers. There's your island right there. And you just saved a good chunk of change that you can put it into a better wall assembly.
Totally. That's a great tip.
Let's talk lighting, shall we? You want thoughts?
Ooh, let's talk
Thoughts on
lighting.
lighting, Jen?
So my thoughts on lighting is, I think in some cases it makes sense to splurge, and in some cases it makes sense to save. And this is kind of my philosophy in general, which is, think about the places that are going to get visibility in your house. So in the house that I'm building, the kitchen island lights are a centerpiece. And there's a lighting fixture that's over the kitchen sink that should coordinate with that. And then there's a lighting fixture over the dining room table and in the entryway. And all of those matter. And so, for example, for my kitchen island lighting, what I did was I went to a local stained glass artist and I commissioned him to do blown glass globes that went with, like, I had specific colors that I wanted, and they pulled together all the colors in the kitchen. And honestly, it wasn't that expensive to do that. And they're beautiful. It's clear that they're handmade because they're not like factory. They're not quite the same size, and the color marbles a little bit differently, and they're a beautiful centerpiece to that room. So I would say pick the fixtures that people are going to notice. And then, for example, we have recessed lighting everywhere else. And I think this is a great conversation to have about sensitivities with lighting, because I don't mind blue light, but I know a lot of people mind blue or LED lights. To me, yeah, exactly. So this is why it's important to know yourself. But regardless of what kind of lighting you do, it's important to know that LED lights can make a lot of dirty electricity. And so if you're going to pick one fixture to be like a recessed light fixture throughout your entire home, it's worth it to work with a building biologist, an EMRS building biologist, and have that fixture tested to make sure that it's as clean as possible from a dirty electricity standpoint. So that's what we did. We picked a fixture. Usually it's the ones with the exterior driver that are a little bit cleaner than the cheaper ones with the incorporated drivers. So I had this particular fixture tested, and it tested clean. And so we use that throughout, and those fixtures just blend in. They're not an art piece. But we really spent our money on the few fixtures that really matter, that people will see.
I
What do
completely
you think?
agree. I think lighting is such a place where you can save and splurge. I mean, in general, my design work is high low, right? So you could be spending a little bit more money on that one statement fixture in your foyer or over your dining table, and then you can go totally low. Etsy is an amazing resource for some really incredible lighting. I use it often, and these are new light fixtures, so they're not secondhand light fixtures. If there are sensitivities there, but Jen, I am so aware of the blue light. And so I'm very much making sure that I'm following the circadian rhythms of the sun with my lighting, turning things off, wall washing and sconces and red light in the evening. Um, and I'm an anti-dimmer girl. I know, shocking to the interior design industry, because everything like worshipped a dimmer because it set the mood, it set the aesthetic, it dimmer this, dimmer that. But we've learned from our training that wowzers, like there is some intense dirty electricity coming out of dimmers. And so I mean, I
Yeah.
can walk into homes where my body starts buzzing and I start feeling just like, I'm like, ooh, I feel like there are a lot of dimmers around here and I can hear it like zzz.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say go really simple with your lighting. I mean, these new construction homes, I mean, they are just putting one too many cans. Like if your builder's like, hey, you've got budget for, I don't know, 25 cans, like just go ahead and slash it in half. You don't even need that many cans because it's too much lighting in general. And you really want to maybe opt for some more sconces versus so much overhead lighting. So think about relocating some of your funds to move to maybe a decorative wall sconce. Like scratch 3 cans and add a wall sconce instead so that you can start to mimic what the sun is doing. And then you have options like midday to turn off overheads and turn on wall sconces.
I totally agree with that. And I think I would also add, don't forget about your windows and your natural lighting. And I think from a wall standpoint, windows are the weak point in an assembly. So you really have to make sure they're installed correctly and they're waterproofed and flashed correctly and that they're good quality windows. Usually casements are better than double hung or sliders. But windows and just having natural light means that you never even have to turn those lights on. So if they're not on, there's no EMF
Right.
implications.
Right. Yeah, we underestimate the power of our windows. I don't know if you've noticed, but homes like 1960s, 1940s, you can see the windows have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller through the decades. You can see kind of that sash at the
Interesting.
bottom of these older homes. Those windows used to go from floor to ceiling. And then you can see, like, at one point, the homeowner was like, I need new windows. And they decided I could save a little money if I get a little shorter window. And so they keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But daylighting, I mean, the rhythms of the sun is actually what generates a cellular response of health. So, yeah, I think we underestimate how powerful windows are. And you're so right. Like, if we actually had more windows, we wouldn't have to be so reliant on our electrical sources of lighting.
Totally. Yeah.
So, let's see. You want to talk about flooring? Because that's a big one that we get. Do we splurge?
That's a
Do we
big
splurge?
one. I think that's important. Let's talk about flooring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think we should save on flooring or splurge on flooring, Jen?
So we have this note document that we're sharing, and I noticed that you said cares. And I think this is one where we are going to totally agree because I say cares too. And so, but I actually disagree that it's a save or a splurge because I priced out flooring and it's kind of in the middle of all the flooring that I priced out. It's really not as expensive as you might think it is. But the reason that I like cares, so first of all, it's great from a VOC perspective. It's really low VOC, but also the way that it installs is it's a click lock flooring. It's not glued directly to the floor. And I for a flooring assembly, it's so much more important what's underneath it than the flooring itself. And so so ideally in your foundation, you should have a taped Stego 10 or 15 milliliter vapor barrier between the soil and your home because the soil is always wet. And if you just have concrete on top of it, concrete is a sponge and it will soak up that moisture and then it will transfer it into your walls and into your floor. And so if you do not have some sort of a vapor barrier between the soil moisture and the finishes in your home, then at some point you're going to get mold in that assembly. So we can't talk about flooring without talking about what's underneath. If you know for certain that you have a taped Stego vapor barrier, then you can do whatever you want. If you don't know, then you really have to think about that assembly and you don't want to put anything that's going to block that moisture at some point so that it can condense and cause mold. And so what I like about the cares is it's not glued down to that foundation. And you can use a breathable underlayment like DMX One Step, or I'm not thinking of the other one from Green Building Supply, but there's another one that's breathable. You can use that underneath so that any vapor that comes up into the, oh, Quiet Walk was the other one. Any vapor that comes up under the floor has a path to dry out. And then you do a click block flooring on top of it. Cares is a great option for that. And so we installed Cares at my house, and it's beautiful. I love it. It wasn't that expensive. My husband installed it himself because we built a lot of the house ourselves, and it wasn't that hard to install. And I think Cares is a great option.
And that's spelled KAHRS for those that are wondering. It does allow for floating. It's ULEF certified. Absolutely. And of course, it depends on your square footage, on how much money you may be spending on flooring. We always like to advocate to build smaller, build for what you would actually use. I mean, how many McMansions are not fully lived in and utilized? And so you'll save money naturally by utilizing a smaller square footage plan in general. So yeah, Cares is awesome. And I would say flooring, just like wall coating, it takes up a large surface area. And so you want to make sure that you are bringing into your building envelope something that isn't going to cause concern. I think this naturally leads us to tile. Tile is such an interesting wall surface covering because you can go high or low with this really fast. I have found some great options, Jen, as you have as well, from big box stores like Lowe's.
Mhm.
And, you know, one thing about tile, though, that I will say that ceramic and porcelain tiles, they're going to be composed of more clays and feldspars and quartz, and they're generally a better choice. They do, however, can contain some toxic ingredients in their pigments and their glazes. So historically, one major health concern would be lead in the glazes. And so if you have a tile that is third party certified, or if that tile is selected in the US, it's going to be more prone to be free of antimicrobial coatings and any post-consumer recycled content. You know, sometimes I think of tile like hot dogs.
Okay, now I have to know.
Because you never know what gets wrapped into that product.
Oh my gosh, I'm never going to see tile the same way again.
Yes, because
That's awesome.
you
True.
Yeah, so with tile, it can be a mix of, some manufacturers have recycled old ray tubes like CRTs from TVs and computers, which contain high levels of lead in the tiles. And so the EPA does currently allow the production of recycled CRT tiles in the US, but they say when glazes are properly formulated and fired at a high temperature, the lead is sealed or vitrified and its potential to leach from the glaze is limited. But we want to take all precautions necessary. So third-party tiles sourced in the US, if you can just kind of cover that foundation, you're going to have a better option when you're sourcing tiles like ceramic or porcelain.
I think that's great advice. I read somewhere that so I tried to test the tiles that we had for lead using one of those little swab kits, but that's not really an accurate way to test for lead.
Well, especially if there's a glaze, it just depends, right? If it's glazed, if it's coated, because we're not able to really get into the heart of the material always.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. So in that case, I think one of the major dangers with tile is where is your tile cutter cutting that tile? You probably don't want it to be cut inside the house because then that's spreading dust all over. And also those are wet tile cutters and spray water all over the walls. So make sure that the cutting is happening outside for one thing. And then just about tile, there's a couple things I want to say, which is that I think it's worth it to go into one of the expensive tile stores and really take a look at how they're doing designs and what kinds of tiles are in fashion and what color combinations look good. Go into those stores and just for inspiration and look and see what you see. And then go into the big box stores like Floor and Decor. Home Depot has some in store but they have a lot more tiles online, and you can very easily order samples from Home Depot. They'll just send you one tile. So even if they don't have it in the store, you can still order a little sample and see what it's going to look like very easily. And then go in and see if you can buy the tile that you want for less expensive, because usually you can get very comparable options from like the big box stores than you can from the really expensive tile stores. And the other thing I would say about that too is the same as my philosophy on lighting, which is splurge where people are going to see it. And so we got most of our tile from Floor and Decor, and it's all basically big tile pieces. It's a modern looking house. Where we splurged was the kitchen backsplash, because that's what people are going to see. So we used a really nice handmade tile there, but you know what? It's not even that much space. And so splurging on a little bit more of expensive tile on just the backsplash really didn't add too much in terms of dollar, but in terms of impact, that's a beautiful area that people really see. Whereas, they're not going to be in the master shower. They're not going to look at that.
Hopefully
So
not.
hopefully not, right? So, and then the other thing I would say about tile is it also, just like flooring, it matters what's underneath it. And so we spent a lot more on schluttering. Schluter is a waterproofing product that goes behind tile. We spent a lot more money on the schluter layer that's underneath the tile than we did on the tile itself, because normal tile, with the assembly, there's always pinholes. And all it takes is a little bit of water seeping through a pinhole over a number of years, and you can get major black mold underneath your tile, and that's not what you want. So when you're thinking about tile, also think about what's underneath it and how you're actually going to waterproof it with the walls.
I can't remember where I heard this from. Could have been a podcast. But a tile installer, this tile installer never ripped up tile and did not find mold
Yeah, I
under
believe
any
it.
tile when he's done a renovation.
I believe it, because hardly anybody thinks about waterproofing. A lot of times they'll just put tile directly onto green board or purple board, which is really just regular drywall with a bunch of chemicals sprayed on it. You should never use green. First of all, you don't want those chemicals in your home at all. But also they really don't do anything to prevent mold. It just makes the mold mad and more aggressive, because it has to fight a little bit harder to live, so it creates more mycotoxins. Use something like DensShield Tile Backer. Make sure your waterproofing layer is perfect, and then install your tile. And you'll be better than 99% of the tile installations that are out there.
That's right. And that's because we see the house as a living organism. I mean, I would be really mad too if someone was spraying me with chemicals, and I would fight
Right?
harder if I couldn't get out, right? And so because our
Yeah.
house is a living organism and we are opting for more natural materials, and stick frame construction uses wood, right? It's a natural material. We want to work with the rhythms of nature and not fight against it. And so, yeah, so Jen, that 1,000%. Put the money towards making sure that there is waterproofing, that your space is water resilient. I mean, I will often advocate for a full like water room. Your bathroom is a water room. Are you throwing water everywhere? Just
Mhm.
act like you are and prepare for it.
Every bathroom in Europe is built
That's
that way.
right.
It's only in America where we think, oh, the water's just going to stay in the tub. Well, it doesn't. I mean, anybody who's ever had a toddler knows that that is a wet
Yeah,
room.
that's right, which is so interesting because Europe does treat bathrooms in that manner. We have seen from a design perspective, there's this no shower door concept, and I've designed plenty of bathrooms like this where you don't have a shower door, you just have a glass panel separating between the tub and the shower and the vanity, all right? But here's what's happening. Here's a problem that's happening is we are not prepared for how to prepare those bathrooms in the European way for water resiliency.
Right. You can't have it both ways. You have to, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But we're learning. We're learning, and a lot of people are
Yes.
waking up, and it's all good, and it will work itself out. But I would love to get into if you have any other thoughts, Jen, about tile or vanities or flooring before we move into.
No, I think one more quick thing is just cabinet handles. We should talk
Let's do
about
it.
that. That's another great way to save, and I think you and I both have the same idea, which is that you can get some great ones on Etsy or Amazon. for a lot less expensive than you can get in some of the design stores. So and for me, if I do IKEA cabinets, which I always do IKEA cabinets, I do not buy my handles from IKEA because the handles, they scream IKEA. I mean, if you put the IKEA handles on, they're like, this is an IKEA kitchen. But then if you get nice handles off of Amazon, which is probably the same price from IKEA, it can really dress up a kitchen and make it look like a custom designed kitchen. So yeah, that would be the only tip I'd have there.
Yes. Also, in my opinion, save your money on fancy hardware and opt for Etsy or Amazon or even antique stores if you can handle it.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
So let's get into textiles because, with home finishes, that's often considering window treatments and draperies. And so I think a lot of times people are really at a loss here for like, okay, how can I make my window treatments as healthy as possible? Lucky for us, there are so many great brands out there that are catching up to speed with us. I will just say, choose organic cotton, organic linen, organic wool as much as possible. And I'm specifically talking about drapery. There's a great company called Magic Linen. They have 100% Oecotec certified European flax linen fabrics. And then you have Organique, which is 100% organic hemp. They offer a curtain that is grown and made in Europe. And then you have another company like Blazer Light, where it's a little bit more durable for commercial applications, but those fabrics are sourced from New Zealand. So you want to look for certifications. So if you're wondering, how can I make my window treatments and drapery as healthy as possible? Do they carry a GOT certification? That's a global organic textile standard, or do they carry an Oecotec standard? And these are just trusted organizations to make sure that every stage of the textile production, from the growing of the fibers to the end of the final product, meets certain standards. So, and often if they don't have these standards, then we can expect pesticides, flame retardants, phthalates, heavy metals, and formaldehydes to be added into these fabrics. So, Jen, I would love any thoughts too about textiles for your window treatments and draperies.
I don't have a lot to add to that. I just learned something right there. Honestly, I usually buy draperies at Costco because they're cheap, but they are probably also full of all the chemicals that you just mentioned. And so I think that's great advice, what you just said, and I just learned something.
Well, and here's the thing, Jen, too. Not every aspect of our home is going to be perfect. And so you have put your money into the areas that you feel most inclined to do, and vice versa in my home. So again, we are all so different with our health goals. So I'm pretty sensitive to fabrics. I actually did a blood test several years ago in the height of being chronically ill. And one of my results came back that I was testing high for Azos blue dyes. And
wow.
yeah, so I literally had dyes that were synthetic, full of these chemicals in my system. And so my naturopathic doctor was like, okay, like let's make sure that the fibers you are interacting with are as clean as possible. So what we bring into our home, we want to make sure that they are clean and organic as much as possible. I mean, if you have to start and you're wanting to do something, just start with your sheets, making sure those are organic fibers that don't have synthetic dyes, that are just naturally the fiber itself, the cotton plant, the hemp plant, or the animal protein. So yeah, it can get complicated, but I totally understand that if budget is a concern, just start with your bedding.
Mm-hmm. But I totally agree with that. And I think you said something really important there that is worth calling out, which is that start with your bedroom. I mean, in all of these decisions, the place that's most impactful to your health is where you sleep at night. And so if you have to make decisions, like if you can only get great fabric in one place, your bed is a great way to do it. If you can only make one place safe from an EMF's perspective, the place that you sleep is where to do it because that has the most impact on your health.
That's right. It's where we can rejuvenate and recover.
Yeah. Detox.
Yeah, detox. Focus on the bedroom, especially if everything else might feel overwhelming. That beautiful 20 by 20 space could just be your someone's next goal to cover.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked cabinets, we've talked countertops, we've talked lighting, we've talked window coverings and flooring and tile and paint and hardware. Dun 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 dun. You ready for our next topic? This one's my favorite.
Okay, let's do it.
Appliances.
Yes, let's talk
All right, go ahead and
appliances.
riff, Jen. What comes to your mind with saving money on appliances?
Okay, so here's the thing about appliances is that every single one of them these days seems to be it seems to feel the need to tell you about how it's doing all the time and what its temperature is and what speed it's blending on and when I mean, like, we don't need any of this information. And so from an EMF perspective, I always advise my clients, even if they don't think they're sensitive to EMFs, do a test. Turn off your Wi-Fi at night, see if you're sleeping better. Like, just get yourself out of this bombardment that we're always surrounded by it and just see. And I don't personally feel that everybody's affected by EMFs, but I do feel probably more people are than realize it. So check. But then also, when you're buying appliances, really look into whether they're smart appliances, because I mean, even my blender is smart. I don't need to be able to control my blender with my cell phone. That's ludicrous. So I always, first of all, only buy, well, if I can. That particular blender wasn't even available without Wi-Fi, but if I can, I buy dumb appliances. And that is a great way, incidentally, to save money on appliances, because all the basic ones that don't, broadcast their status all the time, they tend to be the lower end appliances, but they can also be really nice. And so I buy all my appliances from Lowe's on sale. I catch, the Black Friday sale or the Memorial Day sale. They usually have a sale at Lowe's where if you buy a certain dollar amount, they'll just discount it. So it's not like you have to buy all KitchenAid or all Whirlpool appliances. You can buy the ones that you want. And then if that's like $2,000, then let's say you get $400 off that. So that to me is the way to go, is save your money in appliances, buy ones that are healthier from an EMF perspective anyway. And don't try to go all one brand. Like, really look at the reviews online and look at the consumer reports and look at what people like from a usability standpoint. And so I have a certain set of appliances that I just love. That's dumb. It's not smart, but it functions well and it doesn't add to my Wi-Fi burden. And it, like, all of my appliances together are probably less than what most people spend on one stove.
I just love it. I ditto. I also have dumb appliances and I'm holding on to my refrigerator. It is a beautiful piece of old school art, like I just don't want it to go away. But you're right. It's so important to not select appliances that are constantly bombarding you with RF or radio frequency signals. It's just not needed, right? And you
Right.
will absolutely save money. I mean, we went and bought the cheapest washing machine and dryer at Lowe's, and it's going to probably outlast so many of these smarter appliances, because I believe there's a bit of some planned obsolescence happening as well with these appliances,
Absolutely.
just like our iPhones. And so, I mean, the reason our refrigerator is kicking for so long because it just doesn't have all of this added unnecessary technology. I mean, and I think it kind of incorporates into the philosophy of how we choose to live life. We're choosing to be present. We're choosing to write down our grocery store list when we're home and grounded versus like being on the go, frazzled, being told by our refrigerator that we need to pick up avocados today.
Right? That's crazy.
I don't need that in my life. Do you?
Yeah. Right.
Like I don't need something else reminding me, what I need to do, especially a robot in my refrigerator.
Exactly. I don't need one more thing to be nagging at me. I got that all everywhere.
That's right. That's right. So yes, save lots of money by opting for dumb appliances, because if you opt for dumb appliances, you are actually smart.
Yeah, there you go. That's in a nutshell, the whole conversation right there. Totally agree.
Okay, Jen, have we missed a subject that you would like to talk about? Did we get everything? Did we miss something?
I'm kind of going through our list. I think we're good. I think we got Let me see. I think we got everything that I wanted to talk. Oh, one more thing is plumbing
Yes.
fixtures. I did want to say about plumbing fixtures, which is that a lot of this is a splurge one to me because a lot of the cheaper plumbing fixtures they use plastic internally. And so you can get a fixture that looks exactly the same from like Hans Grohe versus a cheap Amazon knockoff. On the outside, it can look exactly the same, but the Amazon knockoff is going to leak. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, whereas Hans Grohe is likely not. And so that's one like for toilets, it's not such a big deal. I'll just go get one from Costco, usually a Kohler. But in terms of the actual faucets and fixtures that are going to transfer walls or transfer water from the pipes in your walls to you, I would say splurge on those because you do not want to have leaks in within your walls or in your cabinets. And then I would also say I recommend to everyone to put an extreme mat inside their cabinets to catch any leaks, and then a dumb moisture leak detector. They sell those on Amazon. They're a couple bucks each, where if the little metal sensor hits any kind of water, it just screeches at you. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no anything about that, but put one in the bottom of that leak mat so that when you do have a leak, because you will someday, you catch it before it becomes a water damage concern. So yeah, so do you have anything to say to add about plumbing fixtures?
Just, I agree completely with that. Just a quick story. I remember buying knockoff plumbing fixtures. This was years ago, and the internal parts being plastic. And the plumber had to, really piecemeal together the internal parts to make it work. And we don't ever really want to make it work
No,
when
we
it comes
don't.
to our plumbing. We want to be sure that we are preventing any sort of possible water issue down the line. And so I agree, this is definitely an area where you want to splurge and not save money on. One comment would just be the glues that are often used in plumbing fixtures.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes we look at these glues and go, okay, well, is there a cleaner option? And glues are a really tricky area for healthier options. And so because if someone is coming to me with a sensitivity about mold, my goal is just going to be, all right, well, let's get this home as durable as possible. So we might use the standard glues, and maybe we find a slightly better option, but we know that they are going to seal and they're going to do their job. They're not going to make it work, and we're not going to hope for the best by using a crunchier option. I would just advise the client to stay off site, work with their plumber, make sure they're notified when the plumber is installing, and they are notified to go, okay, I'm not going to go to the job site for the next 2 weeks. Why some of that off gassing is happening. That's all I would add. But I agree with you.
Yeah, plumbing glue. I'm not very sensitive to VOCs, but plumbing glue is one that sets me off
It's
every time.
intense.
It does dissipate. You just need to stay
That's
away.
right. That's right. Yeah.
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 Well, that's all I had to talk about. I love this conversation. I learned a lot myself, and I love getting your perspective and how this was a conversation because we both have two slightly different but similar perspectives. And so I thought it was great how we were able to talk about this. And yeah, this was a great conversation.
I did too. And what's so fun about this world is even within the healthier building world, you've got the building science world, you've got the green building world, then you have the building biology world. And so there will be some disagreements within those fields because they're different principles and they're different practices. And so for the listener, I just want to say that it's not just conventional light frame, stick frame construction versus the healthy home world. In the healthy home world, there are varying practices. And so really finding a path and maybe a combo. Jen, I think you're blending the combo of building science and building biology really well. I'm a bit of a purist, so I want to go as crunchy as possible, but just like I said about the plumbing glue, right? Like I want it to do its job as well. And until we find a crunchy glue, I'm just going to use the plumbing glue that we use. So and science is evolving and technology is evolving, and we are getting a lot more biomimicry products on the market that are mimicking nature in a really beautiful beautiful way. I mean, from bats, we get radar; from termites, we get new building designs; from kingfishers, we get the bullet train. Humans have been using biomimicry for centuries. And so at the end of the day, we want to look at nature because nature will never fail us. And slowly but surely, we are going back to our natural ways. And along the way, we get to have some fun and we get to share and learn and experience new ways of doing life with other people. So Jen, I'm just so grateful that I got to meet you through the Building Biology Institute, to sense your embodied wisdom, and to join you in this mission of really changing entirely the construction industry. It's kind of a big deal. I mean, It's kind of a big deal to be pioneering, to be shaking up this industry for the betterment of humanity.
And I think that's why we're both here, and I so appreciate this collaboration with you. I think it's a lot of fun.
I do too. All right, Jen, until next time, we'll have to do a part 2.
Okay. That sounds good.
And maybe part 2 could be more about robust and resilient wall assemblies.
I would be happy to do that. Yeah,
deal. I'm excited. All right, Jen, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on, Lauren. It's great talking to you.